Hello and welcome into this week's ARCA Menards Series Rewind show right here on Racing News Now. As always, I'm your host Garth Allen. Thank you once again for joining me today. If this is your first time catching a Racing News Now video, consider going down below to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell for notifications so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. On today's ARCA Rewind, first off, do not forget we are still in our initiative hashtag Race to 1K. If you are not subscribed yet, why aren't you? It is free to do. Just go down there, hit that subscribe button. Once we hit 1,000 subscribers, YouTube will let us do mobile live streaming, and that will allow us to improve our live coverage from the track immensely. I have so many ideas for things that we can do once we have that ability, but YouTube won't let us do it until we hit 1,000 subscribers. The quicker we get there, the quicker we can give you so much more great coverage from the track. So, let's talk about today's ARCA race. It is the return of the main ARCA Menards Series. The ARCA Menards Series East returned last weekend at Toledo Speedway. Now the main ARCA Menards Series is back from the Talladega Superspeedway. A little bit of a boring race, to be completely honest. Only one caution flag in this race for a total of 2 laps, and that was the halfway break at lap number 39. We had no cautions whatsoever for incidents in this race. All green flag racing outside of that midway break. We only had 2 drivers spending time out front in this race. Drew Dollar spent a total of 40 laps out front, while Riley Herbst spent 36 laps out front. So as you can tell with all of that, there wasn't a lot happening in this race. For most of the race, we had a 4 to 6 car single file draft that just completely pulled away from the field. In the first half of the race, before that halfway caution, you had a 5-car draft that just completely pulled away. Michael Self, being the caboose on that draft, eventually lost touch with them and fell back to the second pack, but then caught back up on that halfway break. The other thing that kind of put the nail in the coffin for any kind of competitive racing really in this race was the fact that by that halfway break, by lap 39, there were 7 cars on the lead lap of this race. A 21-car race, and those top 5 cars that stayed single file, or 4 by the end of that first half, had already lapped all but 7 cars in this race, and 4 of them were the cars in that draft. So there were 3 cars not in that draft that had not gone a lap down before lap 40. By the time we got through that halfway break, there really weren't that many competitive cars to be able to fight for this win, and then it just became the same thing after the halfway break. We had about a 5-car draft that broke away, and that really decided this race. Now, it did get fairly interesting there with about 2 laps to go. The Venturini cars all got lined up in the back of that draft. Michael Self, Ryan Repko, and Drew Dollar. They got lined up behind Brett Holmes and Riley Herbst. They made a move down the backstretch, coming to the white flag. Michael Self led the train of the 3 of them. I believe Drew Dollar was in the middle, and then Ryan Repko was the 3rd in that line. They go down into turn 3. They are flying past Herbst and Holmes, and then Dollar gives a bit of a shove to Michael Self in the middle of the corner. Not the greatest place to give a bump draft. This sent Self a little squirrely and sent him down across the nose of Riley Herbst. Completely sideways. In fact, turned almost completely in reverse was the 25 car of Self. Slid back up the track, got it straight, didn't hit anything other than the 18 car, kept going, no caution. What this did was that broke up those 5 cars, and Drew Dollar ended up all by himself about 8 to 10 car lengths in front of Ryan Repko and Brett Holmes, who had also made it through unscathed, but were together and drafting each other. So you would think, with still a lap left, they would have been able to draft right on by, and either Ryan Repko or Brett Holmes would have won this race, because that's the big thing with the draft at Talladega. You get too far out there, everybody's going to get a run on you, and you can't do anything about it. Oddly enough, they come down the backstretch on the last lap, and Repko, instead of taking the run to get around Dollar, just slides in behind Drew Dollar, and they become a 3-car draft. All the way back to the tri-oval. Repko finally makes a move in the tri-oval, didn't have the momentum to do it, and Drew Dollar comes away with his first career ARCA Menards Series win in what might have been the wackiest finish to a race I have ever seen in my life. For a race that 95 to 99% of the race saw no action whatsoever. We saw maybe, quite possibly, the craziest last 2 laps to a race maybe that has ever occurred. I still am trying to wrap my head around everything that I saw in that last 2 laps. It was unbelievable, some of the weird, wacky stuff that was happening in those final 2 laps. But nonetheless, Drew Dollar was the one that was able to come home at the end of the day with his first career ARCA victory after leading the most laps on the day at 40 laps led. Coincidentally, though, interestingly enough, Dollar led most of those 40 laps early in the race. Started from the outside pole and initially took the lead on the first lap from his teammate Ryan Repko and led the first 37 laps. Then only led 3 more laps throughout the entire rest of the race. He led lap number 69 and then led the final 2 laps of the race. Riley Herbst, outside of those first 37 laps, dominated this race. He was really aggressive in getting the lead after that halfway break and never gave it up until the chaos of the last 2 laps happened. It was absolutely breathtaking, the weird things that happened that took place in those last couple of laps. Ryan Repko did end up in the second position side by side across the line with Brett Holmes, who came home in third in his home race. Riley Herbst ended up in fourth, and Michael Self, after being almost completely backward in 3 and 4 coming to the white flag, ended up in the 5th position in this race. Still ended up with a top 5 finish. DGR Crosley teammates Thad Moffitt and Haley Deegan had kind of fallen off late in the race. They couldn't quite keep up with that lead draft and unfortunately were never quite able to get back up there, even with the help of their teammate Tanner Gray, who was numerous laps down after a mechanical issue early in the race. Their 3-car draft just couldn't quite get up to that 5-car draft late in the race to try and make something happen with them. Jason Kitzmiller, running the Cody Robaugh number 97 car this week, came home in the 8th position, 1 lap down. Sean Core in 9th, and Ed Pompa rounded out the top 10 to put a fast-track Andy Hillenberg car in the top 10. 11th through 20th, Scott Melton had a fairly fast day for that 69 car. Ran in the top 10 a lot of the day and ended up in the 11th position. Tanner Gray, like we mentioned, mechanical issues early. He came home in the 13th position. Brandon Lynn driving the 22 car this week for Chad Bryant Racing. Remember, he's been in a Venturini car the last couple of years in this race. Unfortunately, had electrical issues early on in this race and eventually just never really could bounce back from those. Ended up 7 laps down in the 15th position. Gus Dean, also with electrical issues. He ended up parking it on lap number 58 in that Wintron car, came home in the 16th position. And final page down here, Con Nicolopoulos in the 0 for Wayne Peterson. Did not turn a lap in this race. So that's your results from the General Tire 200 from the Talladega Superspeedway. Let's head over to the virtual media center, and we've got post-race thoughts from both Drew Dollar and Brett Holmes for you on the post-race Zoom call. So let's see what they had to say after this wild, crazy day that we saw from Talladega.
Yeah, it's been good. We've kept our momentum up. We've brought really great cars to the racetrack, no matter what track it is. We just gotta play the other foot forward, and we'll be right there. I'm really close to a win. I wish we could have pulled it off today. It's just really tough track position wise to do that, but like pair of third place finishes like this is good, always good. And it was kind of like a Days of Thunder moment. I kind of went high and just hoped that they wouldn't come back up the racetrack, and that's what happened. And I let out of it a little bit there to help give me a little bit more time to react to what was going on. And I wish I wouldn't have, looking back on it, but it was still good to avoid that. And my spotter Derek Neeland, he did a great job of telling me what to do and what all was around me, what all was going on. Came over the radio after it finished. I said, "Great job, guys." And then the next thing I said was, "3 for 3. Good job." Because, Venturini is we're all about teams. So, as long as 3 of us, as long as we got 3 out of 3, we're happy. I was thinking, worst case, you get wrecked. Other than that, you're 5th. And but I figured I'd probably be ending up 2nd. Felt like Selfie was going to stick on the top because I was giving him a good push. I would have been content with pushing him all the way to the checkered. Unfortunately, I would have won the win, but it's all for the team. But as long as the Camry wins, I was going to be happy. But I saw Self turn down, and maybe
he chopped the 18 a little bit, and at that point, it's no one's going to give an inch. So that's just a racing deal, and luckily they didn't come up and get me when they were finished wrecking.
So let's take a quick look at your point standings for the ARCA Menards Series following this race before we wrap up here tonight. 3 races into the season now. This was initially supposed to be the 4th race on the schedule, now rescheduled. Still roughly where it was in the original schedule, but Salem being postponed still makes Talladega the 3rd race of the season. Michael Self came into the race with the points lead, left with the points lead, but had a net loss of 1 point. Came in with a 12-point lead over Hailie Deegan, left with an 11-point lead over his teammate Drew Dollar. Hailie Deegan still holds down the 3rd position in points, 14 points back. Brett Holmes sits in 4th, 24 points back, and then Thad Moffitt rounds out the top 5, 27 points back. Really the thing to look at here, though, that top 3 are, at least as of right now, the only ones running a full season this year. Really, that's your championship battle. Brett Holmes has been super fast to start this season, but is not, or at least announced he wasn't running a full season, and I have no reason to believe that he is going to do that now. So really, you're looking at Michael Self, Drew Dollar, and Hailie Deegan right now. Michael Self still has a fairly formidable lead, can lose that lead fairly quickly, but at the same time does have a bit of padding after 3 races this season, after a fairly strong start to the season. Won at Daytona, bounced back in Phoenix for a good finish, and then of course had a chance to win this race, and unfortunately circumstances did not allow that, but still came home with a top 5 finish. Such point standings 3 races into the 2020 ARCA Menards Series season following the General Tire 200 at Talladega. And I believe that will do it for us on this ARCA Rewind show. Let me know what you think of the new setup here, trying something a little different here. Trying the webcam. The past few episodes that we'd been using for live streams and such just didn't quite have the quality that I like. So we're trying something a little different here. It's a bit of a different angle completely, so let me know what you think about this down below in the comments. Hopefully you enjoy this. If not, I can try to tweak things around and try to make it a little better, but I think this might be about as good as we're going to get at this point, so hopefully you like it. Again, don't forget, hashtag Road to 1K. Subscribe if you haven't already for a lot more ARCA and NASCAR coverage. We will be back at the track at Lucas Oil Raceway here in just under 2 weeks for ARCA Menards Series action from there on July 3rd. So if we can somehow make it to 1,000 subscribers before then, you'll get to see all the stuff that we can muster with live streaming from the track there. It'll be a good time, so hopefully we're able to make it, but we're still a long ways away from there. I believe at time of recording, I believe we're at 542 subscribers right now, so we got a little ways to go there, but I have faith in you. We can get there. It'll be a good time once we get there. We'll have a lot of great coverage for you from the track. I got so many good ideas for that. Live stream tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Another NASCAR Heat 4 live stream, trying to finish up that career mode before NASCAR Heat 5 comes out here in a couple of weeks. Will not be a watch party for the Cup race tomorrow. Should be a rewind show, not 100%, but should be one later in the evening for that. Diecast review coming up on Thursday as usual. And then, of course, ARCA's back in action on Friday from Pocono, so of course we'll have a watch party and a rewind show for that on Friday, and I believe a NASCAR Heat 4 stream that day as well. So we got a lot of stuff coming up for you here in the next week or so on RNN. And then, of course, in 2 weeks from now, we will be back at the track giving you live coverage from Indianapolis. So lots of stuff coming up for you. So again, if you didn't already have incentive enough to subscribe, definitely you do now. Go down below, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for notifications while you're at it so you don't miss a thing going forward from RNN. While you're down there, do me a favor, hit that big thumbs up button for me if you like the video. It is much appreciated when you do. But at that, this has been the ARCA Menards Series Rewind Show. I'm Garth Allen for Racing News Now.